This little terrarium is completely made up of trimmings and little scrap plants I had lying around the house. And to be honest, it is one of my favorite pieces in my studio. Hello and welcome back to Logan and Rando Aquascaping. I'm super excited for today's video because we have a long overdue update on all the terrariums in my studio. So without further ado, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into the content. Last time I covered these terrariums, I had just scaped the DOOA system. And since covering that little terrarium, I've completely rescaped it because I dealt with some pretty bad melt. Sometimes that happens, so you just have to pivot and do something new. This is a really good example of why you should always save some trimmings. You never know where you're gonna have a little project or you wanna spruce up another one of your tanks. And that's exactly what I did with this terrarium. Currently, this terrarium sits on a little stand right next to my television, and I'm not a big TV guy, so I find myself looking at this little terrarium a lot more. And I think having a nice pop of color really makes a terrarium interesting because when plants are in their immersed form, you often get completely different color expressions. So I took advantage of that, and it provides some really, really nice red highlights. But in the back, I'm really excited how the Rotala green that I had left over from some trimmings is beginning to convert to its immersed form, which is much tighter and more compact, and it's super shiny, and the leaves are super round, hence the name Rotala rotundifolia green. As far as hardscape goes for this terrarium, I got really experimental. I wanted to primarily feature an overgrown plant look, but I figured I'd grab a couple bold pieces of wood, and for that I am using the black forest driftwood. I actually picked this up from a little shop in Seattle, and I picked it up way back in December. Hadn't had a use for it at the time, but I knew it would come in handy eventually, and here it is in here. I think I kind of wish I had a little bit more of it, but I do kind of like the look of it. It's very minimalistic and a little bit outside of the typical style I do, so I'm enjoying it. And the maintenance for this little terrarium is super easy. When I first set it up, I was pretty regimented. I was spraying it every day, airing it out, and now it's just whenever I feel like it, which, you know, sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's once every 3 weeks. It really depends, but the thing I like about this little DOOA system is it has nice built-in ventilation, so you always know that the terrarium is getting some nice airflow. However, I have had a bit of mold, as you can see on the wood, which is super common with terrariums and not a big deal. And what I do is once in a while, I'll just treat the problem areas with a little hydrogen peroxide, and I am well on the way to getting rid of it. But if I were to add something like springtails or little critters that feed on it, that would help a lot too. So that's definitely not out of the question for the future. You know, full disclosure, this is a very premium, expensive system. I don't recommend it if you're just getting started with terrariums, but if you're like me and you kind of really value the aesthetic of aquariums and terrariums in your home and you kind of treat them like museum pieces, I think the DOOA system is really appealing because you kind of piece everything together. It's a little bit fun to set up, and in my opinion, it just looks absolutely stunning. But you could totally get away with a much cheaper alternative. You can go to like a hobby store, pick up some glass, and, you know, mount it on whatever you like. And with a little terrarium, pretty much any old shop light will do, but I do really like this DOOA magnet light. I think it's super sleek and it just looks really cool in my living room. And then my other terrarium, which sits right next to my desktop where I do all my video editing for the week, is my little Aqua Worx Iota. And this thing has just been such a pleasure. It's super simple. You know, it's not gonna win any contests or anything, but I really wanted to try my hand at a very tiny iwagumi in terrarium form. And I think I was successful. There's a lot less condensation that builds up on the glass of the Iota. So even though the DOOA system has those little vents, I do find that the Iota is better at maintaining humidity without obstructing the view. But I am realizing that probably the humidity in the terrarium has a lot to do with the relative humidity in your living space, because a few days ago in Portland, the humidity dipped down to about 20% in my apartment, and I found that the terrariums were completely clear, which was awesome for a day or two. But most of the time it's quite humid in my apartment, you know, maybe 40 to 60%, and the view is obstructed. So if it's something that bothers you, you're gonna have to wipe the glass every day, every 3 days or so to maintain an unobstructed view. So next time I work with this little iota, I think what I'll do is take a tip that I got in the comments and try and slope the substrate a lot higher. When I set this up, I really struggled to get a nice dramatic slope of the substrate. And somebody gave me the great tip of once you have the slope in place, make sure you sort of do it at an angle and then spray everything down with some distilled water, and that'll help hold it in place and prevent the substrate from rolling down. So I'll try something like that, and I'll make sure to use even bolder, more prominent hardscape so that it doesn't get completely taken up by the plants. But for just such a simple little desktop terrarium, I don't think it has to break the internet, and I just love looking at it. It brings a little piece of nature to my workspace, and it's something that really anybody can achieve. So I'm super excited to see these terrariums develop over the summer, and I definitely want to scape some more terrariums. I'm lucky enough to live now in the Pacific Northwest, and there's so much beautiful flora that I can collect, and I'd love to do something with all locally collected mosses and ferns and hardscapes. So if that's something you'd like to see, let me know down below in the comments, and subscribe to the channel, like the video. It helps my little channel get more content out, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.